聞こえの未来。
皆さん、聞こえの未来シーズン2をご視聴いただき誠にありがとうございます。オーティコン補聴器の田中です。
茨城大学教育学部の田原です。
どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
このビデオシリーズ聞こえの未来では、聴覚に関する最新の研究を分かりやすく噛み砕いた形でお届けすることを目的として企画しています。なんと今回シーズン2ではここデンマークエリクスホルム研究センターに来てしまいました。で、実際の研究者にですね、いろいろ最新のトピックについてこれから聞いていきたいと思います。どうぞお楽しみください。
では行ってみましょう。
Okay, so in this video, we would like to welcome Dr. Hamish Ines Brown and Dr. Dorothea Wundt. So, could you tell us about yourselves, briefly?
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Hamish. I'm a principal scientist here at Ericsholm Research Centre. I've been here about 5.5 years and I have a background in neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience.
Thank you.
My name is Dorothea Wundt. I work as a principal scientist here at Ericsholm for almost 10 years.
Yes.
And I also hold an affiliate associate professor position at the Technical University of Denmark. And my research mainly focuses on cognitive hearing science, understanding the cognitive consequences of hearing loss and what we can do with our hearing devices for people that suffer from hearing impairment.
Thank you. So, Hamish, I think that you already know you from the 聞こえの未来 Season 1 for Japanese people. And but Dorothea, this is your first appearance in our project. So it's our great pleasure to interview you. You are so great researchers like you. And so in Season 1, Hamish did a great job explaining the listening effort and listening fatigue to Japanese people. But this time we would like to think about listening effort and fatigue a little bit more deeper. So could you provide a definition of those concepts again and describe the factors that influenced them?
Yes, of course. So listening effort basically describes the amount of mental or cognitive resources you invest in a listening task. That could be having a conversation with somebody or following this interview. So there's actually many factors that would influence how much effort you have to invest. Some of them are related to your own abilities, your hearing abilities, your cognitive abilities, but others are more related to the environment you're in. Let's say you have a conversation and there's other people talking at the same time, that most likely increase the amount of effort that you have to invest in that situation. And then there's a third very important component, and that's the importance of the situation and your own motivation. So if it's a very important conversation or this interview is very important for you because you want to learn about listening effort and fatigue, then you most likely invest more effort as compared to a person that has no interest in learning more about this topic.
Yeah, so thank you. The both listening effort and listening fatigue are very important concepts for improving the QOL, quality of life, in the people with hearing impairment. And I think that understanding of those concepts is gradually increasing in Japan, thanks to your explanation. Yeah. And on the other hand, listening effort and listening fatigue are somewhat similar concepts. So I think it's difficult to distinguish between the concepts. And recently, I have also heard the concept of the listening battery. So would you clarify the listening effort, the listening related fatigue, and the listening battery?
Sure. So listening effort, as Dorothea just explained, is kind of the effort that you put in to a listening task while you're actually doing it. And we've been very good at measuring this, and we'll talk a little bit later about how we do that at Ericsholm. And it's been a nice way for us to look at how well hearing aids perform. So can they make listening easier in the moment? And that's always a good thing. But also what builds up during the day, if you have to invest a lot of effort in listening over a very long time, basically you get tired. And that's what fatigue is. So fatigue is the feeling at the end of the day usually, although it could be in the afternoon or whenever you start to get tired. That's as a result of all the effort that you put in through the day. And listening fatigue is the part of fatigue that was related to listening and not because you were running or doing an exam or something like that. So that's the difference between effort and fatigue. Fatigue is kind of the result of exerting a lot of effort during the day. The listening battery that you mentioned, that's a concept that we have where we're thinking that we would like to try and estimate how much kind of fatigue or effort you have left at any point in time. So we'd like to be able to give hearing aid users some kind of estimation of like how full their listening battery is during the day. And that's so that people could have some insight into how much effort they want to allocate. So I think with hearing, we don't want to reduce all effort all the time. The easiest way of doing that would be just to switch off the hearing aids, and that's not what we want. We want people to be able to, when they want to, when they have the motivation that Dorothea mentioned, to exert maximum effort if that's what they need at that moment. So it's about giving people some indication of how much energy they have listening.
Yes, thank you. Now it's all clear about this definition. And while we need to understand and support the listening effort or listening fatigue in people with hearing impairment, assessing them can be very difficult. So, but how do you mainly assess them?
Yeah. So there's, you can say, 3 different kinds of assessing listening effort and also listening fatigue. The first one is basically asking people about their perceived effort or subjective effort in fatigue. There's standardized questionnaires also that we use here in Ericsson, or rating scales. Then another way of monitoring whether somebody spends effort or is getting tired would be by just looking at changes in their performance. There's specific paradigms that you can apply in the lab called dual task paradigms, or also reaction time paradigms where you measure how fast people perform. And the third one, and that's the one that we mainly do here at Ericsson, you basically look at the bodily response due to effort and fatigue by monitoring physiological markers of effort, for example. That could be the pupil size or heart rate, but also by looking at neural response using EEG or fNIRS.
Right, so very interesting. So if possible, could you show us the laboratory where those experiments are done?
Yeah.
We can, yeah.
Okay, let's go. So could you explain this equipment?
Yeah, so what you see here is our experimental setup that we use to measure listening effort by measuring the pupil size, which is called pupillometry. So we have an eye tracker standing here in front of the participant. And a typical task looked like we asked the participant to look on the screen. And then we present some sound through the loudspeakers. There could be, for example, some speech, some sentences in background noise. And we ask the participant to listen to the sentence and repeat back. And while the participant is doing that, we measure with this camera here, we measure the pupil size. So the dilation of the pupil. And what we typically see is as soon as the sentence is presented, the pupil starts to dilate. So it's getting bigger. And then after the sentence, or when the person responds, then it goes back to a normal size.
But can I ask that? So this is a listening task, but why do you see the pupils? Because listening occurs in the ear and the auditory system, but why?
This is a very good question. The reason why the pupil tells us something about listening effort is basically that it's due to our autonomic nervous system. So our autonomic nervous system acts as a stress regulator of our body. So the autonomic nervous system has two branches. One is called the sympathetic nerve, and the sympathetic nerve kicks in as soon as we're experiencing stress. And that can be already when we listen to somebody speaking in a noisy environment. So when the sympathetic nerve is more active, this has an effect on a lot of bodily responses, including the pupil. So the pupil starts to dilate as a consequence.
Hi, Hamish, so could you explain this equipment?
Sure. So our test participant is sitting here in the chair, and he's wearing a cap which is made of elastic material, and inside the cap are mounted some small light emitters and some light sensors. And what these are doing is the light emitters are sending infrared light through the skin and through the skull, and they're illuminating the top surface of the brain. And then a short distance away, about 3 centimeters away, is a light detector. And this light detector measures the tiny amount of light that gets reflected back from the surface of the brain. And by measuring this reflected light, we're able to tell how much oxygen is in the blood in that location. Now, when neurons are active in the brain, just like your muscles and any other part of your body, they use glucose and they use oxygen to do their work. So what we're looking at here by looking at this, by analyzing this light, is how much work is being done by the neurons in the small little space of the brain that's underneath this light source and light detector.
Can I ask about what is the difference from the EEG, very traditional method,
Yeah.
and this one? Yeah.
So EEG looks kind of similar. The person's wearing a cap, it has a lot of cables, but EEG is measuring electrical activity directly from the neurons. And here with fNIRS, what we look at is the blood flow and the concentration of oxygen in the blood. So it's a little less direct than EEG. That's a disadvantage. But the advantage is that we have a bit more spatial resolution. So we can tell from one location to the next where the brain activity is actually coming from.
So, and one more question. So, which region is activated in the listening or related to the listening effort or fatigue?
Well, there's a whole network of the brain that's activated when we're listening to speech. There's a number of different pathways and mechanisms involved. So we don't measure all of that with fNIRS. But what we typically do is we run experiments where we vary the difficulty and we look in a particular part of the brain called the left inferior frontal gyrus. It's a long name, but this is on the left side. And it's towards the front of your head. And it's a part of the brain that becomes active in a lot of different tasks when they become difficult. So it becomes active in listening tasks when the listening becomes difficult, but it also becomes active in other sort of like doing difficult mathematics or any type of difficult situation. So that's one of the areas that we look at.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah.